In recent weeks, the world has faced an unexpected and powerful move. The administration of Donald Trump has introduced a new package of sanctions against Russia's energy sector, particularly targeting large-scale oil exports, thereby creating a serious rift within the BRICS bloc. According to Reuters insiders, the new measures affect Russia's largest oil producers and include a ban on member countries of the bloc purchasing their oil, which automatically puts at risk nations such as China and India, both of which have been among the main buyers of Russian oil. For BRICS, this has become a true test. On the one hand, through Washington's pressure on Russia and its energy flows, the United States aims not only to weaken Moscow, but also to undermine the bloc's economic foundation. On the other hand, an internal fracture has appeared within BRICS. Oil-dependent countries relying on cheap Russian supplies are being forced to act. Diplomatic sources confirm that a series of informal talks has already begun between India, China, and Russia, and a working group meeting in China is expected in the coming weeks to discuss ways of bypassing American restrictions and maintaining Russian oil supplies. As one participant put it, if we simply play by Washington's rules, we lose. Meanwhile, Moscow and Beijing are taking a more radical stance. They see this as an opportunity to accelerate the abandonment of the United States dollar and transition to settlements in national currencies, rubles, and yuan. Analysts from the Council on Foreign Relations have noted that one of the key drivers of BRICS growth is the reduction of dependence on the American banking and financial system. The Russia-China agenda now includes the goal of making the American petrodollar less significant, thereby weakening Washington's global economic leverage. At the same time, India has chosen a more balanced course. Diplomats in New Delhi emphasize that the alliance with the United States remains strategically important, while relations with China are not always smooth. According to the Wall Street Journal, India seeks to maintain flexibility and play on two fronts. It is not ready to completely abandon Russian oil imports, yet it also avoids a public confrontation with Washington. This situation creates a dual dynamic within BRICS, an intensifying call for an alternative system, alongside an internal fear of losing access to Western exports and investments. If BRICS member states begin a mass withdrawal from the dollar and switch to settlements in national currencies, yuan, ruble, and rupee, it would be a powerful blow to dollar dominance. The population of the bloc's member countries represents more than half of humanity, which could significantly shift the global currency balance. Analysts point out that if the transition mechanism takes hold, the United States will effectively lose one of the pillars of its global financial power. Thus, the US sanctions, which may appear at first glance to be a successful move to deprive Moscow of major buyers and undermine BRICS's position, could in fact backfire. Instead of weakening the bloc, they may strengthen its cohesion. Russia and China are ready to act jointly, exchange technologies, establish alternative trade routes, and build interdependence outside the Western system. As one Western expert noted, sanctions have become a catalyst, not a deterrent. In this context, the recent virtual BRICS summit, where leaders discussed the inadmissibility of unilateral restrictions and the need for new financial mechanisms, takes on new significance. Russia and China believe that America itself is creating the conditions for the formation of an alternative economic order, and that the game is moving to a new level. Yet not everything is so clear-cut. India, prioritizing its own energy security, is in no hurry to announce a complete abandonment of the dollar. It is carefully balancing, aware that a sharp shift could trigger retaliatory measures from the West and harm its economy. A diplomatic source in New Delhi noted that India is not seeking confrontation, but rather a favorable place at the table. As a result, the BRICS bloc in its current state looks less like a unified front and more like a coalition with divergent trajectories. Some are moving toward revolution, others toward cautious modernization, and some toward an almost alliance but not quite an alliance. For the United States, the situation is becoming not only economic, but also strategic. If the dollar truly loses its dominant role in international settlements, it would strike at Washington's ability to finance its deficits and diminish its influence in global politics. But for BRICS countries, especially Russia and China, this presents an opportunity, a chance to reshape the global financial architecture to their advantage. to weaken Western sanctions and to become the center of a new global pole. At the same time, US pressure itself, whether through sanctions on Russian oil or threats of secondary tariffs, is becoming fuel for the alternative system rather than a tool for maintaining the status quo. The next key moment will be how the ongoing negotiations unfold. If India and China truly launch a mechanism for joint oil purchases and settlements outside the dollar, and if Russia offers favorable partnership terms, it would signal that the bloc is shifting into a mode of active response rather than mere defense. However, if India remains aligned with the United States or finds the pressure too great, the rift may deepen, and in that case, BRICS could lose its unifying momentum and remain a collection of individual states rather than a cohesive, innovative alliance. In any case, Trump's decision has become a crucial test for BRICS. It could either solidify the alliance of member states, creating a new multipolar economic architecture, or destroy its internal dynamics, breeding competition and disunity. Which outcome will prevail will become clear very soon. As Donald Trump's new sanctions against Russian oil take effect, the global energy map has begun to change slowly but noticeably. Traders from Singapore report that part of the shipments now move through shadow schemes, under the flags of third countries, via intermediary firms registered in the United Arab Emirates and Malaysia. Analysts note that the volume of indirect Russian oil purchases already exceeds pre-war levels, signaling the ineffectiveness of US pressure. Moreover, according to the Financial Times, about 30 tankers carrying Russian oil headed to Indian ports in October 2025 under altered documentation of cargo origin. Although these figures are not officially confirmed, logistics company sources state that the market has simply adapted. Meanwhile, Washington is trying to respond by expanding the list of sanctioned companies and threatening secondary measures against those involved in bypass operations. A representative of the U.S. National Security Council stated that the White House is closely monitoring the actions of India and China and reserves the right to impose economic consequences in case of violations. This rhetoric provoked a sharp reaction in Beijing, where China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called Washington's steps an attempt at diktat and economic blackmail. In response, Chinese state media published a series of articles directly calling American sanctions a tool of neo-colonialism. Against this backdrop, reports have emerged of a planned meeting of BRICS energy ministers in Shenzhen, China. According to sources cited by the South China Morning Post, the summit's agenda has already been set: the creation of an alternative payment system for energy transactions, the development of an interbank clearing network, and the introduction of a unified digital settlement hub that would enable deals to be conducted in yuan, rupees, reals, and rubles. Sources claim the project is informally called BRICS-Net and is already being discussed with the BRICS Development Bank. If implemented, it would represent the most significant step toward the bloc's financial independence since its founding. In the coming weeks, it will become evident whether BRICS can turn the US blow into a point of unity or whether the fractures within the bloc will prove too deep. But one thing is already clear: the era of a unipolar oil market is coming to an end, and neither Washington, nor London, nor Brussels controls global flows the way they once did.